Okay, guys, so at this point, we'll be looking at iterating through arrays. So basically, this is just the same thing as if we have a list of 1, 2, 3, 4 for I in our print print I. This is just iterating through the lists, the items inside of the array, and then printing it out of the console. I believe we know this is a for. This is using the for loop to iterate through to go inside of this array and then get individual values or items inside of the array and then maybe perform a certain logic. We could say if I is equal to 3, say print um, 3 is in the list, right? So if I should print this, you see, it says 3 is in the list because we have 3 here. So you could use all of this to perform logical operations and all that. The same process applies to when creating arrays um, with NumPy. So here we have our NumPy.array, and inside of our NumPy function, we provide 3 or 4 and 5. This is basically a one-dimensional array, and the way we look through this is still using the for loop, say for I in R, right? And then we say print I, and then I'm going to just do this. And if I run this now, you can see we have all the values printed to us inside of this array, inside of this array. So, but there's one thing I want to show you guys. What if we have a two-dimensional array? How do we look through that? So I'm going to split this and create a two-dimensional array. So first off, I'll create my first array, and I'll have my second array, 1, 2, 3, and inside of it, I'll have another nested array starting from sequence of 4 to 6. So this is basically a two-dimensional array. If we print this r dot ending, um, do this till we get 2 back, basically means that's a two-dimensional array. So how we look through this, say for I in r, right? Let's print I. Let's print this and see what it outputs to the console. Watch what happens. Let me get rid of this. Watch what happens here. Instead of going through the iteration, right, and then printing each of the values inside of it, the it printed the items, the array that were nested inside of this first array, right? But what we actually want is that if your goal is to just leave it like this, it makes perfect sense. What if we want to get access to the individual items inside of it? Because the first thing that happens is the first iteration that's going to happen on a two-dimensional array is, which is slightly, let me create a one-dimensional array and then explain using that. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? What's going to happen here if we're to comment this out and then print this? You could see it printed it out, all of them, all the values. So it goes through it because this is a one-dimensional array. There's nothing nested inside of it. So it just goes through the items directly, right? But if I put comment this now and then I should. So what is inside? What is nested inside of this array? So let me make this more readable for us and put this to be more readable, right? See here, inside of this array here, we had two items. So what's going to happen is going to iterate first this and then print them out on the screen, right? But how do we get access to these guys? So that means we need to um, do a second iteration, right? Okay, you've iterated through this first list, which is what it does, and then prints this out. We need to perform another iteration that's going to iterate through these guys again, right? To print out their exact values. And then we do this with what we call nested for loops, nested looping. So This is just simply same thing as saying for, creating another loop inside of this to go through this guy now inside of these guys. So we say for a variable name for x in what I. Remember, I now is these two values, these two items here. So we say for x in I, and then I'll just indent this and then say print x, right? Let's see what happens. And voila, we have the whole value printed to us, right? So we have to go two nexting, one looping, and then the second loop nexted inside of this to actually get this. So we're performing an iteration two times, right? This is a two-dimensional array two times. We loop through the first array, we get the item, and then we loop through the second array using a second for loop to get the individual items inside of here. So that's how to perform a loop on a two-dimensional two-dimensional array. So what happens when we have a three-dimensional array as well? So I'm going to create a three-dimensional array right now, and I'll leave this as it is to be more readable. So I'll create my first, this is the first array here. That's the first array. And inside of the first one, I'm going to have a second array inside of it, right? And inside of this second array, I'm going to have another array inside of it. I'll say one, sorry, I'll say one, two, and three, right? And then I'll have another array inside of it, continuing saying four, five, and six, right? And then I'm going to come here and then create another array with another different array inside of it again. I'll say 7, 8, and 9. And I'll come here, create a second item inside of the second array, then nexted in the first array. I'll say 10, 11, and 12, right? So, so yeah, so this is basically a three-dimensional array. Okay, so the question is, how do we now look through this three-dimensional this three-dimension array, right? Uh, yep, this should be. So I don't know if this is more readable enough. So we have our first array inside of this, and then we declared a second array inside of this first array. And inside of this second array, we now have another array nested inside of it, right? So this is like one, two, and then three, right? With two different items arrays inside of this, and then we have another one which is inside this guy, and there's a second one which is also inside now this guy. So this is basically a three-dimensional array. If I should say r, let me leave this. Let's check the dimension to be sure. Dot ending. So yeah, it says three. This is a three-dimensional array, right? So how do we loop through a three-dimensional array? So first of all, let's go through the first iteration process. So at this point, I'll just say print I, right? So I'm looking through this for I in R, which is this, print I, print this. Let's see what it gives us. So it gives us the first two arrays stored inside of it, right? Which is this guy and this guy here. So if I should make this even more readable, what we have here is this, right? The first two arrays stored inside. The reason why we have the first two arrays stored inside of it, let me make it more readable. Make it more clearer. Sure, quite clearer. I think, yeah, yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's it. I'll just take this, push this, just a bit, and yeah, and this, this, take this, yeah. Yeah, okay, so this is quite readable now. So we have, this is the first array, and inside of the first array we have a second array. Inside of this second array we have these two arrays, right? So it's like kind of like two arrays inside of this one. So it's going to iterate this first, it's going to iterate this first array and then list the items, which is this is holding index 0, right? And this is holding the second index for the second array inside of this first array. So that's why we have these two listed here. That's why we have these two listed here. So in order to go further, let's perform a second looping to see what is going to actually um, print to us. So we say for a in, call yours anything for a in I. Remember for a in I, which is basically what we have here. So we've succeeded in reaching this point. So this is I now. So for a in I, let's print out a to the terminal and see what that gives us. Oh, sorry, I did not indent my code. So that is why I had that error. Yeah. So now we've now gone through what this second array is basically doing now is entering these ones now, and then getting these arrays specifically, and then printing out the ors, right? So we just made our second level looping, right? So how do we get the individual items now from these guys? We need to make a third iteration. We need to make a third iteration. And to make that third iteration, we'll come here and then next another loop saying for B in what? In A. Because A is now these guys. So we want to enter A and then get each of these uh, items inside of it. So I'll index my print statement and I'll change A to B here. So I'll clear my, oh, dash, just leave it and then print. That's an error. Okay, I forgot to introduce the colon. Sorry, that's an error on my side. So actually print this, we now have all our values printed from 1, 2, 3, 4. We have access to the individual um, values here, as you can see. So that's how to perform looping on a nested arrays that have been nested upon nested upon nested upon nested. That's how to perform looping in a three-dimensional array. And we've looked how to perform the same thing in a two-dimensional array. If it's a four-dimensional array, we'll still have to go deep again, right? To say create a fourth, the fourth, this is the fourth loop. We'll say uh, for C in B, right? And print C, right? But there's a better way to actually do things, right? This is so like this is so not good. What if we have 10 dimensions? Like we need to make 10 more. Like this is so not good. Next thing 10 different for loops just to get to our values, right? This is not good at all. Not really, really, really good. So in order to do this, I'm going to get rid of this. How can we now like loop through all a three-dimension, a four-dimension array without nexting loops, right? The way to do that is using a method that is being available to us. It's called um, ND iter. ND iter. It's kind of like stands for number of dimensions iteration, it's iterables or iteration. So if we're to do this, we say for I in called numpy is this the numpy, the instance of the class, and then we'll pass in the function called uh, data or the method data, and inside of ndata we pass in the name of the variable that stores our array. So this is arr, and then pass our colon, and then let's print I. I'm going to do a CLS here. I'll clear my console and then print out. You can see now we just with one line of code, right? We've printed out the whole 3D dimension, right? It doesn't have to be 3D dimension. You could do this on a 2D dimension and as follows as well. So that's it for iterating through arrays.